Hello everyone and welcome back to the good stuff. We are continuing our 1858 match between Paul Charles Morphy and the man with the greatest mustache amongst anyone Morphy ever faced, Thomas Wilson Barnes. There you have it, this gentleman over here. This is the fourth game we're showing, another wild one, so let's just dive straight into it. Barnes, again with the white pieces, opens with e4, and Morphy goes for his standard e5. We have knight to f3 by Barnes, and now d6. Morphy goes for the Philidor's defense. We have d4, and here e captures on d4. Of course, Morphy knows that something like bishop to g4, which some weaker players played in those days, is no way to treat this position, as you've seen if you've seen his Opera House game. So e captures on d4, we have knight captures and knight to f6. And now, today, knight to c3 is the most common move here, but bishop to d3 is the old continuation. Sometimes, very rarely, is also seen today. So bishop to e7 and knight to c3. We have castles by both sides, and here Morphy goes for c5. He kicks away Wilson's knight from the center of the board. That's the plus of the move. However, the negative side of this idea is that it leaves Morphy with a backwards d6 pawn, which could be weak later on. And okay, knight to d2 e2 by Barnes, and knight to c6 now by Morphy. We have f4, and now comes a6, taking away the b5 square from Barnes's pieces, and now a4, not allowing Morphy to go for b5. So bishop to g4, pinning this knight, but Barnes not very much impressed by this. He just goes h3, and now Morphy needs to either go back somewhere or trade the bishop for knight here, because if you go back, then the bishop can very easily be trapped. So after h3, Morphy decides to trade here, bishop captures, and now we have queen captures on e2. There is one other game where knight captures on d2 was played, but that's also a game from this era. I don't know who the player with the white pieces is. Boden had the black pieces. But here we have queen captures, and it is as of move 12 that this position has never been reached again. Some of you asked in the comments, what do I mean by this? I mean that in tournament play, since this game was played in 1858, up until this point in time in 2020, using the database that I'm using, this position was never repeated ever again amongst any two players after this game, Barnes versus Morphy. So Morphy continues with rook to e8. This was a good opportunity for Morphy to get rid of his backwards pawn with d5, as Barnes allowed it. But first he goes rook to e8. He wants to first prepare it. Now d5 will open up the e file. But Barnes just goes queen to f2, and it's very dangerous placing the queen on the same diagonal as the king while the dark square bishop is still in the game. You know, it's a long way off from opening up this diagonal, or is it? Morphy continues with rook to c8, just developing the rook nicely to the open c file. Not open, but it could very well open if this knight lands on d4. At some point, black might exchange something, this pawn might capture. The c file could open up. And here we have g4. Barnes, not afraid. He's just, he's just a no reverse gear Barnes. Not just in this game, in every game. And here, knight to b4. And here, Morphy is putting pressure on the bishop, on the pawn. And here we reach a critical moment of the game. Here, with a move like bishop to c4, Barnes just continues the game. And he keeps enjoying his advantage. He's like really controlling most of the board. He has a beautiful bishop here. Not much to worry about. Also, he has sufficient control of the d5 square, which is very important. And next you can play rook to d1, bring the bishop into the game. Well, first you want to play something like b3 and then get the bishop into the game, get the other rook, and so on. However, here, instead of bishop to c4, Barnes played b3. And Morphy just gets a little bit too much out of the position. Now, I'm sure you guys know what Morphy played here, but just in case you don't, even feel free to pause the video here and find the absolute best move for black while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on paying attention, as we mentioned this diagonal already. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's d5. And d5 comes with a very mean threat, because now if you don't do anything, well, There are a lot of threats here. For example, if you push or if you capture, it doesn't really matter. Black just easily wins it with c4. And now the bishop is under attack. Once you take care of this, you just get bishop to c5, and you lose the queen. So this diagonal suddenly opened up, and there is no countering this. You don't have bishop e3 since the rook also covers that. So that's the problem with this d5 move. So Barnes has to react to this. He finds king to h1. e5 is also possible, but then e4 could be very strong. A lot of possibilities here, but yeah, c4 just opens up this diagonal instantly, and it's just too much. So here Barnes played king to h1. He wants to get the king away from this diagonal, and he says, okay, I'm ready to trade now. Which Morphy does. We have d captures on e4, knight captures on e4, and now this capture is problematic for Barnes because Morphy just captures it. Barnes recaptures, and now Barnes is completely lost. But once again, just to sharpen your tactics, feel free to pause the video and win this game for Morphy. Well, I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the double attack. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's bishop to f6. And now the bishop is under attack, and also the rook, and there is no escaping this. Whatever you play, it just doesn't matter. So here Barnes played bishop captures on b7. He said, okay, at least I'm going to capture this rook, but it's all for nothing because this is a full rook hanging. So bishop captures on a1, we have bishop captures on c8, and queen captures on c8. We have bishop to e3 now, hoping to win Morphy's bishop, but of course Morphy just delivers first check with queen to c6. We have king to h2, and now bishop to d4. Morphy even offers a pawn, but it's of little use to Barnes, as a rook to e2 would be deadly. So here, on move 22, it was in this position that Thomas Wilson Barnes resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. You could trade this, but like we said, after rook to e2 check, there's just nothing to do. Rook f2, knight can capture on c4, and there's just no handling this. For example, if queen d8 check, you can just block it with rook e8, and the queen is under attack. And even if you go for something like rook captures here, hoping for the queen to capture, and then this captures, this comes with check. So there's also that. So there is no continuing this. After bishop d4, Barnes resigned, and another great victory for Paul Charles Morphy. So another very interesting game, and you can see that Barnes is a fierce opponent. He's an extremely strong player. For example, up until this point, let's say still f4, very nice, very nice. This was all, as if it were played by a modern player. So none of this was like even slightly a lesser move. But here, allowing this d5 move was just too much. It's like in those days they didn't realize the power of Black's breakthrough. For example, the central d5. Even Morphy, he could have played it much sooner, but he waited, and now only now that Barnes allowed it for the second time did Morphy play d5. But now as means of achieving a tactic, as means of freeing up this diagonal, but not as a sort of a positional achievement. But yeah, really interesting, and it's really interesting where Morphy cracks Barnes, as Barnes is, in pretty much all the games that we've shown, Barnes is better up until a certain point, and then Morphy just either starts playing better, or Barnes just isn't good in those parts of the game. But it's hard to say. But okay, there are more games of Morphy and Barnes to cover, which we will. I do hope you guys are enjoying them, and we will learn more about Barnes and his great style. So once again, I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Keith Wagstaff, Janak Vadgama, Thomas Davies, Henrik Fogla, and Thomas Cowie for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the good stuff, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world. And the Legends of Chess tournament is almost upon us. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.